There's a delay, like 15 seconds, so we have to check to confirm. Wait to confirm it.
Yes, but guys.
What they're saying is that we hear Sandro from room speaker, I think. That's what they...
Yes? Cool. So, coming back to our discussion and speaking about software craftsmanship.
Right. So, yeah, so now I had someone left the meeting, is that okay?
Yeah, it's Kasia, so it's not needed anymore, like her connection is not needed.
Right, let's do that. So then I think that one of the things that you were asking is about software craftsmanship, right? So what it is, and so I divide software craftsmanship almost in two sides, right? So I divide software craftsmanship as a movement and as an ideology, as a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this distinction is important because it has some historical elements to it. And so the movement was almost like an anti-agile or a counter-agile movement. That's how it started. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that we talk about software craftsmanship today is because we were unhappy with the direction that Agile took in the early 2000s. Because if Agile had been implemented the way it was conceived in 2001, we probably would not have a need for a new movement. But because it was more focused on the process side and not so much on the engineering side, people like myself and Uncle Bob in Chicago and many others, we were a bit say, hey, this is not what we wanted. We didn't want just a new process.
Mm-hmm.
What we wanted is that close collaboration between business and technology, but with good engineering to enable the business and not just have a new ways of working, but the same old technology ways of working. So the movement was the creation of a manifesto, the creation of software craftsmanship communities, helping other communities to be created in other countries, go to the conferences, criticize the things that were out there. In the first years, I remember, like from 2009 to 2012, 13, it was war in the conferences. Like we would come in on stage, I would criticize everyone from Scrum and Agile, and they would criticize us, and we would criticize Lean, and it was everyone criticizing everyone. But and this was good because, like, I believe that we had very strong criticisms to the people, mainly on the Scrum side and other Agile methodologies, but they also had very valid criticisms to us as well. For example, one of their criticisms was that we were navel gazing, just looking at our belly button, right? So that we only focused on our quality, the small code, the quality of a small class and stuff. And they said, look, you have a business to run here. You have software to deliver. And you just care about how beautiful your code is. And they have a point. Because in the early days, because we were bringing the technical practices and mainly the extreme programming practices, because this is another important thing. I always made a distinction that software craftsmanship is an ideology, so it doesn't have practices. Methodologies have practices. Mm-hmm. So extreme programming is a methodology. It has practices like test-driven development, pair programming, continuous integration. Scrum is a methodology. It has practices as well. Mm-hmm. So you have to conduct meetings and so on and so forth, and demos and so on. Craftsmanship is an ideology. Mm-hmm. It's like Agile. Agile is an ideology. Agile is not a methodology. Agile is an umbrella where there are many methodologies inside. The ideology of Agile is short feedback loops, inspect and adapt.
Yeah.
That's what Agile is.
Yeah.
That is the ideology. When people say, I want to work in an Agile fashion, what they mean is, I want to shorten all my feedback loops. And with that shortened feedback loop, I can learn much faster about my process. And that learning gives me the opportunity to inspect and adapt.
Yeah, exactly.
And then inspect and adapt, that gives you the agility.
Yeah.
So craftsmanship is a similar thing. It's an ideology. It's like we want to be better professionals doing a great job, providing great software that will enable the business to move well, and that will enable us to do a good job. But there's no practices. The practices we borrow from other methodologies. So pair programming, TDD, continuous integration, all of that stuff, they're not craftsmanship. They are practices from extreme programming that we like a lot. But the same way that we would use domain-driven design, hexagonal architecture, patterns, or whatever else. They are all different practices and techniques that we might use to do our job. Yeah. So that's the difference. The movement is sharing those ideas, creating those communities, enabling knowledge share across people. It's that a movement is people moving.
Yeah.
And then there is the ideology. The ideology is individual. We as individuals, we want to be good professionals. We want to do a good job. And you don't need to be part of a movement to be able to do a good job.
So would you say that because you want to be a professional, you borrow some practices because you believe that they make you better professional, like let's say TDD, yeah? If you want to be a software craftsman, you may decide to use TDD because you believe that TDD is good to be more professional, to become a more professional, yeah?
Exactly, but then we need to be careful. This is a discussion that I've been having more recently. One thing that we were a bit upset about Agile in the early days is that they forgot the idea of being agile. They forgot the idea of agility. So what they focused on was adopting methodologies, adopting practices. So for example, the agile transformation was measured by how many teams were doing Scrum, instead of how many teams became more agile to deliver quality software.
Yeah.
And we need to be careful not to do the same in craftsmanship. Because if we are too dogmatic about practices, we lose the sight of the value that they bring. So I always say that good practices are only good until we find better ones to replace them. So I never discuss TDD. I discuss the value that brings to, so for example, I discuss like, what are we trying to achieve first? And then what are the practices that if we adopt, we can achieve that result? And if people say, I don't want to do practice X like TDD, I think no problem at all. You don't need to do TDD. But what you're going to do instead, that's going to give us the same
value.
The same value. That's for me what craftsmanship is. That's the distinction between an ideology, a mindset, and the practice. Yeah? The mindset is always like, how can I do better? And the practice are things that you use until you find better ones.
Yeah, yeah. Great introduction, I would say. It tells a lot about software craftsmanship mindset, as you said, yeah? Like approach to being a better programmer, actually, yeah? Not a solution in itself, but something that gives you framing to become better, yeah? At developing software. So, how would you, if you could like maybe summarize software craftsmanship in few words or in one sentence, what would you say? What's the most important about that?
The word I like the most is professionalism. I think that's because that's the word that encompasses a lot. You can break professionalism in so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
For example, there is one in doing a good job, like do the best that you can given the constraints you have. Right? That's for me is professionalism. But of course that a good job is not just told by who does the job, it's who pays the job. So professionalism also means like whoever is paying for my work, their satisfaction is key. Because if they're not satisfied with what I deliver, I would not be a good professional. Because like every other professional that we hire, being a lawyer, a dentist, a hairdresser, a builder, or whoever, we ask for references. We ask how their clients are happy with their services. So that is our first indication of their quality. It's not the technique that they used
Not the practices we are using. It's not about that in itself, yeah?
Yeah, this is the mistake that I've seen in the agile world, and I don't want us to make the same mistake. Practices are a means to an end. Methodologies are a means to an end, and we cannot lose that from sight. Agile, at some point, the means that was adopting Scrum became the end. We cannot do the same. So for me, professionalism means we need to make sure that whoever is paying for our services, and it doesn't matter if you are a permanent employee, if you are a contractor, a consultant, it doesn't matter. Someone is paying for your job, and they need to be satisfied with your output. But then, of course, in order to provide that, you as a good professional, you need to master certain practices so that you can do a work with quality at an acceptable speed.
So if you're doing TDD and you're not delivering value to the business, you're not doing a good job, probably.
So,
it's not enough.
These discussions, I think that we had them a lot in the beginning. Even Uncle Bob, like we had loads of conversations about that in the past. Because of where we were coming from, because the agile adoption didn't include the extreme programming practices, in the early days of craftsmanship, what we wanted was to rebalance that. And that's why we focused so much in the extreme programming practices. But that's the wrong discussion. It was the right discussion when in 2008, 2009, 2010. Nowadays, the discussion is how can I do work that is valuable? So, for example, I need to deliver software for more and more. Companies want us to deliver software more often, so as often as we can. But in order to do that, we cannot destabilize production. One thing is to deploy multiple times a day. Another thing is to have loads of bugs every time that we deploy. So in order to provide that agility, in order that we can parallelize work across multiple teams and people, and we can deploy software multiple times a day with quality, we need to automate almost everything. So for that, we need to do better requirements, we need to do better architecture and so on, including testing, including automate all our tests and stuff. And then TDD for me is a great tool, but see how I'm positioning that. I'm not saying if you don't do TDD, you are not professional. I'm saying like what is professional is can we deliver very often with quality without introducing bugs. That for me is the good job. TDDs are means to the end. It's one of the many techniques that we use to that. And if people don't want to use that, fine. But they need to tell me what they're going to do instead that's going to allow us to deliver software continuously.
Yeah, and with good quality, what practices enable it. You said that that's how I understood it, that there's some conflict between Agile and software craftsmanship, or it was like a response to Agile not working. So Agile done right is compatible with software craftsmanship, or you think it's?
No, it is. It is. There was a historical bit. So the Agile transformations, they were failing at some point. Failing for the business that invested in those Agile transformations for 2, 3, 4, 5 years even. At some point they said, look, we have all those processes, all Agile coaches everywhere and stuff, and everyone doing stand-ups and post-its and all that kind of stuff. But where is our software?
So it's not. So it's the same as with other practices you mentioned, like TDD or continuous delivery, that if you use Agile as a tool to deliver better software, if you use it to make software better, not because someone wrote that you should do a stand-up meeting and you're doing this without thinking how it impacts your delivery of the better software, then it's okay. If you use it to improve your results, Yeah,
every practice that you use, including stand-up meetings or TDD, they should have a purpose. Because like what we are doing is we are forcing our entire team to work in a specific way. And this has a cost. So we need to understand what are we trying to achieve. So I always prefer to to have this intensity, deploy software multiple times with quality and have a very lean processes, I need to have good architecture, good automation, good requirements gathering, good integration with the business, good separation of teams, and so on. So this today, after like probably around 2015, I think, that's when things start normalizing a bit, because DevOps came in as well, about probably a bit earlier. But then I think we all realized that we cannot only have engineering. It's not the point is not just also have all the software being automated with test-driven development if what we are delivering makes no sense to the business, right? If you don't have a good collaboration with the business. So I think that where we are in a much more mature stage now. I think that Agile, the current Agile that is more on the process people side, alongside craftsmanship, alongside DevOps, alongside Lean. So those things together is what makes the best teams in the world, the most modern companies in the world, where they were taking every single piece of their value stream, if you like, from idea to software production, and they were able to apply ways of working or practices and methodologies across the entire thing that gives that agility to the company.
While still focusing on a product in the end,
Exactly.
Okay, so how would you start with being better software developer? Let's say you're already a developer, you're working in a team, and you see that there's a lot to be improved, in collaboration between business, in collaboration between the team. I know it's a very general question, but could you tell what's from your experience the biggest problem in not adopting those practices that make software better, that make us deliver better quality software and software that meets business requirements? So what's your experience, given that what you said?
We at Condurance, we talk a lot about impact, right? So even the way that we measure the seniority of people or productivity and stuff, mostly seniority, is according to their impact. So for example, if you are in the beginning of your career, the impact that we would expect is someone that can take ownership of a specific task and do that well. And in doing that well includes all the technical practices. First of all, they need to be able to refine that story, that requirement with the business. So they said, this is my task. I'm going to go out and I'm going to speak to those people, make sure that everyone understood what needs to be done. They need to be able to come up with a testing strategy to say, look, in order to do that, this is how you're going to test it. This is how you're going to automate the development. This is the kind of design that I'm going to use to implement that alongside everything else that is in the system. So in the early days, your impact is directly related to the work that you do individually. And for that, you need to master the technical practices. The better you master them, the faster you will be, and the highest the quality of your work will have. So micro design, like clean code and things like that. Macro design, for example, clean architecture, the tactical side of domain-driven design. Very rarely in the early days, when you are still new in our industry, you will get into the architecture. But those things you need to do well. Small level design, like clean code, this kind of stuff. Macro design, what I call that, is somewhere in between design and low level code and architecture. That is kind of the structure of your application, right? So how your features are, the components and separation of concerns and so on. So you need to understand that well. You need to understand all the different testing strategies and be able to test drive. I would prefer to test drive them than writing afterwards, right? So you need to understand design, to create your modules well, your units, to compose your design well with well-defined units, be able to test the units independently, be able to test the units talking to each other, so test at different levels, the test pyramid. So in the early days, mastering those techniques will make you very quick to implement business requirements with a good degree of quality, and very rarely you will have a bug in your system. Yeah?
Yeah.
But as you become a little bit more senior, the kind of impact that is expected is higher. So the more senior you are, the bigger the impact you need to have, and then the impact goes beyond the individual impact. So that's when you start enabling a team to perform well,
Exactly.
or a group of teams, or a full engagement. So that's when you start developing other skills and mastering those skills, including architecture, including becoming more deeper, not deepening, becoming the T-shaped kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In the early days, you become a specialist. But as you move up, you need to start developing this much larger breadth. You need to know what's possible to do.
Yeah.
Not only knowing how to do everything, but you need to know what's possible so that you can give better solutions. You need to be able to understand business much better so that you can align your architecture to the business needs. So and then you start becoming a multiplier of impact. You are enabling a larger group of people to perform well. So that's how so when I think about craftsmanship and becoming a good professional, I always think about impact. Yeah, that's how it.
But if you want to improve others, you have to start with yourself, yeah?
Totally.
So like trying to start with the other end is probably not the best way to do it, yeah? Like saying that those guys are doing something wrong without starting with yourself, yeah?
This is like, I think that the question I was asked the most in all those years is like, how can I convince my colleagues, my manager, my whatever, to adopt CDP? That was the question, I think that the one that I got the most. And I always said to people, look, if you are trying to convince someone to work in a different way, let's say, Andrzej, we just met, right? You have your experience, I have my experience. Then all of a sudden, I go to you and say, hey, Andrzej, whatever you do is not good enough. You should do things that I'm telling you. And then if someone said that to me, I would say, no, why would I do that? Just because you were saying, so that's not good enough for me. Because I have my experience, I can deliver software in the way that I work. Why would I change? And then, so if the person comes with an arrogance, you just need to do, that's not going to work. The best way is you need to show someone the value, but with humility. Like, so for example, I normally always said, like, I used to invite people to help me instead of telling them what to do. I would take my own tasks and invite them to help me. But then, for example, the context is important here. If you are in a team where everyone is keen to try new things, then you don't need to know those things well to try to adopt, because you have a team commitment to say, hey, what if we work this way and everyone is happy? Then you start working that way, and over time you help each other and get better. But if you are going a team where they are not so keen and you want to drive that change, minimum you need to be very good at it. Because imagine the situation. I go to you and say, hey, I think you use SYZYGY. And you say, no, I don't want to use because I don't think that is useful.
I tried, it didn't work. I even couldn't deliver anything because it was so slow, that I could tell it.
Exactly. Then we get that all the time. And then, imagine that you say that to me, and then, or you say, you know what, because I did that myself. I said, like, okay, so then show me, if you want me to change the way I work, show me how you work, and I will judge if it's good or not. And then imagine that you ask me to show you, and I suck at it. I cannot type properly, I take forever, and then you are just waiting for me, and I'm there trying to figure out how I do the test and how I do this and that. And then you look at me and say, look, do you want me to do this, to be as slow? Why would I change if you yourself cannot do the thing? So then the practices that I believe that they were good, I tried to be the best I could be. And as soon as I, for example, when I was pairing with someone, and as soon as I grabbed the keyboard, they need to feel that it was a better way of working. Otherwise, there was no chance that I would drive the change.
I'll be devil's advocate right now. Is it enough to just show someone how you work? Do you think it has enough impact, or you should have like some objective measures to prove something?
Yeah, as I said, for example, I don't obsess about the practices, I obsess the value that they bring. So, for example, for me, first of all, it's much easier to drive when you are a team member and people see you delivering features, not just staying from outside as a coach, you know? But then, for example, one thing that TDD alone won't give you everything, because if the requirements are wrong, you're going to still test drive something that's going to come back as a bug, right? Because the bug is not in the code; it's the lack of it's a mismatch of requirements, basically, right? So then, for example, what we got better at is start working closer to refine those, like shifting left, right? So all of the times. So refining those stories much better, defining the acceptance criteria and the testing strategy. And then when we were automating that, one of the metrics that was clear, it was whatever we delivered would not come back to us. So there was no waste in the system. Right? So when we said it was done, it was done. And this is, for me, a much stronger metric than say, what is your code coverage?
Yeah. So it's more connected to the business value delivered than to the quality of the code in itself, yeah?
Exactly.
Great. Maybe someone wants to ask a question.
Yeah, there is another thing in that,
Yeah?
for example, because like we are still talking about one individual or a pair, but like most of the organizations that we work with, they have multiple people, like multiple developers in a team, and they have multiple teams as well. So another thing that people say, like, oh, we are not very productive. Well, but sometimes the architecture is also playing against you. So for example, even for re-architecting the systems, sometimes, for example, say, look, if you want to get productivity, it's not about one person productivity. It's about being able to parallelize teams and parallelize work and making sure that each work parallelized within a team or across teams can go all the way. And in order to achieve that, you need to have an architecture and design that supports that parallelization. So, and that's how for example, I don't talk about refactoring. I talk about maybe we can evolve certain areas of the code in order to enable parallelization or to give stability to changes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important thing. Yeah. Would you like, given that you said that team members have to be open. It's easier than when they're open to new things. Yeah, it's easier to adapt new things and experiment. If you feel that you're the only one who's open and sees that something can be improved, what's your answer to this situation?
So this is
change the team?
No, this is a common thing. This happens all the time for a lot of things, right? So, and this is not even related to software. This is related to human connection. Like even me and my wife, we might see different things, different ways of. So the technique that I use is sometimes when we have people in disagreement, it's because we are already discussing some details. Right? So we are how we're going to do that, and that's what we disagree on the how. Every time I realize that that's where we are, I try to move the discussion one level up. So, for example, I try to find where is the point that we are in common. For example, do we even agree that we have the same problem? For example, do we agree that we are having too many bugs in our system? Do we agree that we have a lot of waste? So you need to move the discussion upwards a few levels so that we find a common ground where we are on the same side. Okay, we agree that we have this problem. Because once we find that, because you start the discussion almost like in opposite ways, right? So it's very confrontational. I have one opinion, you have another. But if we move up to the point where, hey, do we agree that we have this problem? And if we get to yes at that point, then we can start gradually coming back. Okay, so how could we solve that? What are the different approaches that we could use to solve that? And then you are now pushing ideas, but always from the same time. Forget if it's your idea or my idea. Let's list the things that we can do to solve that problem and discuss them. And then you also need to be, again, this is more about the human's relationship than anything else. In order to, for example, there are many things that we might disagree. Right?
Yeah.
But we need to prioritize what are the ones that are really worth us investing time discussing, and what are the ones that are not so important. And I cannot have the discussion with the same intensity. So sometimes it's better for me to take some of the ones that I don't care too much and do your way. Right? So
yeah.
like I think, Andrzej, I think that we should do this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see how it goes. So that I get some credits to try the other one. And then another thing is, so those are techniques that I use all the time. Even to run a company today, don't you have a healthy family, if you like. Another one that we use is the signs of commitment. So for example, if we are making a decision that we know that will have a very big impact, that will shape the next year, we will discuss for a long time because the decision is too important and the side effect is too big. But what if we say, okay, we don't need to make a big commitment. What if we just try this practice just for this user story?
Okay.
Or just for this iteration. And then we discuss again and we try in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So those are much easier for you to get your initial wins and start putting a few practices, trying out because there's no big commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to you to be good enough to work in a way where people will see the advantage of doing that. Because if you suck in doing that, you will lose anyway.
You won't convince someone, that it's worth doing. So like agreeing on a problem actually, and maybe setting the common goal, like agreeing what's our goal, making sure that we understand the problem is the same for both of us, yeah? Okay, great. Anyone wants to ask a question at this point? So, how your perspective changed since you wrote the book? Would you like add something to the book? Maybe you would emphasize something else in the book. Maybe you were too optimistic on some assumptions in the book.
So I don't think I've been thinking a lot about that recently, actually, because the book will be 10 years next year. And there is I don't think I changed my mind about the things that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is that I didn't have enough perspectives. I think that today I can look at the same problems from more than one perspective. When I wrote the book, I wrote from an individual, an employee, and a developer. 10 years later, I own a company that is present in a few countries. I have 200 people in the company. So I have multiple clients. I need to pay salaries and
mm-hmm.
things like that. So I need to manage the financials of everything. So these gave me, I always say that, I joke that there are two things that changed my perspective of the world. One was to have kids, and the other one was to have employees. Right? So as soon as I started having to pay salaries, the same way that as soon as I had to start looking after another person like my
mm-hmm.
kids, the way that I behave changed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is an economical factor. I need to pay salaries every month, right? So there are clients that need to be satisfied. So I think that I didn't change my mind about what I wrote, but I think that what I would emphasize is the professionalism in terms of getting things done,
mm-hmm.
in terms of delivering value. Because, like, for example, we were one of the, every movement, as soon as it becomes big and people start looking, it takes different shapes. You don't control what people will, for example, no one could control what people will think about Agile, or Craftsmanship, or Lean, or DevOps, or whatever else, right? So, but one side effect, and this was in a small part of the community, of course not in the entire community, but in a small part, the software craftsmanship created a lot of prima donnas, created developers that thought that companies had to do everything for them, created developers that said, look, I'm obsessed about my quality, the quality of my code, and you, Mr. Client, you don't need to, you will keep paying my salary because I will decide when I'm done. Right? And then what I was saying to people later on, imagine the opposite. It's very easy just to reverse. Put yourself in the position of who is paying. So, for example, all of us here in this meeting, we pay for services. We pay for dentists. We pay potentially for lawyers, depending on your situation, accountants, hairdressers, builders. We hire a lot of professionals. Imagine you, as an individual, you go to one of those professionals and say, hey, I have a problem that I would like you to help me.
Yeah.
And the person says, I'm not going to give you an estimate. You're going to keep paying my salary, and I will be done when you are done, when I'm done. There's no way that we would hire that service. Right? And imagine they say, no, but I'm going to use the technique, X, Y, Z, technology, whatever. And I said, dude, I just want my pipe to be fixed. I have a leaking pipe in my kitchen. I don't want to change my entire house. I just want my tap fixed. Right? And sometimes we behave like that. We don't want to give estimates. We don't want to do anything. And we feel that we should be refactoring the entire code, re-architecture everything, introduce new technology. And sometimes the guys just want a new screen. So then how do you balance? This is a thing that took me years to understand this. Because like people were saying, okay, so quality is incompatible with, I don't know, delivering. So for example, what I've been thinking is the forces of pragmatism and excellence. Yeah? The craftsmanship movement would really focus on excellence, but we lost sight of pragmatism. But also, pragmatism alone was always mixed or mistaken by cutting corners.
Yeah.
So where is what is the intersection? So the way that I think now, this is how I speak about inside Condurance. The way I think is, we need to understand what are the real constraints within the work that we need to do. And time is a constraint, money is a constraint, skills are constraints, and lots of things are constraints. If there is a feature that needs to get out by Black Friday, that if it's not out, just next year, right? Or regulations and things like that. So then how do I make sense of this? I work like that. I understand all the constraints I have. And those constraints, I feel like those are constraints I cannot change.
Yeah.
So those constraints creates my pragmatic boundaries, right? So, and then within those constraints, within that pragmatic boundary, I will do the best I can. So excellence lives within a pragmatic boundary. Because when you don't have that, you end up trying to focus on excellence, but you don't deliver. Then you have an unhappy customer.
Yeah.
So, and as long as you can explain that and say, look, given the constraints that you are, but I will not take that responsibility alone. I will agree on those constraints. Say, look, if you are giving me a time constraint, whatever constraint, or those are the implications. We will do the best we can within those constraints, but those are all the risks.
Yeah.
So we're going to share that. We're going to have an agreement that you're going to do the best we can, but those are all the risks that you're going to have.
Yeah.
And as long as everyone is in agreement with that, I'll be in peace with myself. I'll be thinking, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
I'm a professional.
Yeah.
You know, that,
So as professionals, we need also to take into account constraints. Yeah, that's actually being professional, understanding constraints and being able to decide what are what are risks. Yeah, caused by taking those constraints into account and being able to explain it actually to the customer. Yeah.
Exactly. It's exactly how, when we are buying a service. It's just thinking that we
Yeah.
are the one paying for the service. When we go to those other professionals, we go there with a specific problem. Because of their experience, they might explain to us that in solving that problem might create others, or there might be other things. But then we don't have an infinite amount of money or infinite amount of time.
Yeah.
So then we will discuss with that professional, say, look, I understand all the risks that you are telling me, but right now I can only do that. I just need my top fixed. I cannot change my kitchen right now.
Pragmatism is a form of being professional, actually. Yeah.
Exactly.
In
Agreeing
the
the
end, yeah.
scope of the work with all the risks involved.
Yeah.
And then do the best you can.
Yeah, speaking of having time constraints, we're coming to an end, and I have a bonus question. I interested about AI topics. What do you think about AI in the context of being a programmer and being professional? Yeah, we've got some questions.
Yeah, so something kind of the question
Yeah,
that you just
yeah,
asked,
yeah,
right?
so-
So in the era of ChatGPT and Copilot and etc.
How does it change? How does it impact being professional? Like a bonus question, your totally subjective opinion.
So, the way I think about this is, my thesis at university is, there was a guy in my classroom, like when we were in the last year of computer science, some of us went to different ways. So some of them went more for business analysis and stuff like that. And there was this guy that was challenging me, because I was hardcore developer, I want to write code, and he said back then, developers are going to die in the future. I did a whole thesis against that. And as I was studying and writing that, I learned that the first time that people were saying that developers would die was when COBOL was invented.
Yeah.
COBOL. Because they were coming from assembly. And then COBOL came along and said, well, now any person can type things in English and developers. And it was the same for the C and all the other languages, and Delphi and Visual Basic, and that was drag and drop stuff. And so the way I think is, our tools are getting better and better, and they allow us, our building blocks, they become bigger and bigger. But our systems become bigger and bigger. So in the past, our building blocks were zeros and ones, or small instructions. So we had a lot of very small building blocks, and we had to assemble them to have a small behavior. Nowadays, our building blocks are becoming larger, but we still need to assemble a lot of those larger building blocks to create something even bigger than we created in the past. So for me, when I look at those things like Copilot and ChatGPT and stuff like that, what they are allowing us to elevate the level of abstraction that we work. So the logical thinking, the way that we bind those blocks, are still the same logical mindset that a developer has. But our systems are becoming way more complex. So of course we have more complex building blocks and larger building blocks to accelerate us to build larger and more complex systems. But I think that it's just an evolution. I cannot see developers dying ever. What will change is the level of abstraction that we work.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
So less pushing buttons on the keyboard, more thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So we have components in the past, like when you start working with Java, how many libraries and that emerged, the frameworks and stuff. So every time there are new component, a new framework, every time we integrate it with a SaaS product, we are elevating the level of abstraction. We don't create those things by hand anymore. And for me, it's just an acceleration of the speed, the kind of problems we solve, but we will keep solving problems. That's how I see it.
So Sandro Mancuso leaves us with hope
Yeah.
for our future.
Developers are not going anywhere. They just need to make sure that they keep evolving with the building blocks.
Great. Sandro, it was a pleasure having you here. It's already 1 hour. I really recommend everyone who's watching us to read Sandro's book. It's a great foundation for becoming better developer. Sandro, do you want to leave us with something else than AI hope?
No, not on AI. Not on AI. Well, I think that I would like to say that I'm very happy to see initiatives like this one. Yeah, so I wish you all have a lot of fun in Warsaw. I hope that you can meet also more in person, but also keep promoting this cross-pollination of ideas. I think that this is what I hope for craftsmanship. One of our items in the manifesto is the community of professionals.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we're doing here, is that exchange. You know, it's not about being right or wrong, it's exchanging ideas.
Yeah.
This exchange is what's going to make our industry flourish. And so I congratulate all of you to be spending your time after working hours to do this, right? Because that is the spirit for me of the craftsmanship community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for kind words and for everything. Yeah. I think one person asked a question. I wanted to say that we'll give your book to that person, but that person already has a book. He has a book already. We still have two. We already gave like 20 Software Craftsmanship books, Polish translations to
Okay, so
others,
I think
yeah.
that we will be striving for excellence, but also stay pragmatic.
Yeah,
during
yeah,
the
that's a
process.
takeout.
So, yeah,
Don't
this
remember
is the
being
takeout.
pragmatic, don't be too dogmatic, yeah.
Exactly.
It's a great take on the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sandro, it's already 7:07. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here. I'll try to keep in touch. Maybe there will be another chance to meet, or maybe someday in London, or maybe you'll come to Warsaw someday. So let us know.
It's time for me to go back. Yeah, I've been there before, and I love Warsaw, and I would love to go back. So let's see. But keep me posted. You have my contact.
Yeah.
And we can do that again in the future.
Yeah.
And maybe we won't have the technical issues that we are having today.
Just
We need some craftsmanship.
we'll be improving and understanding requirements better. So trying
Inspect and
to
adapt. Exactly. We inspect and adapt. Inspect, do, inspect and adapt.
yeah.
So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
And thank you for everyone who made it happen. So Tomek, Kasia,
Michał.
Michał. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, Sandro, once
Bye.
again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.